What is going on, everybody? This is jcabale with Cabale Media, and in today's video, we are talking about email creative part 2. In our first video about email creative for email marketing, we went through the top 10, which at least I think are the most important. Now, you can use any of these top 20 in any way you want. I just went through a list I put together. They're definitely more than what I am speaking about, but I figured I'd just give you top 20, and if you want more, I can give you as much as you need. I want to make sure your email marketing is as successful as you want it to be. I can't be there for you 24/7, but I would like to help you as much as I can so your business can skyrocket and make all the money you want in the world, because I love email marketing. I used to hate it, to be honest with you, but I love it now. Let's move on. That doesn't really mean anything, but single column versus multi-column layouts. I've discussed this in other videos before, but I'm just reiterating it, telling you how you can use it in different examples, whether it be creative or ROI or whatever it is. But single versus multi-column layout really depends on what you're trying to show your customer. Single versus multi-column layout can be a template. Maybe you have one that's single, maybe you have one that's multi. Maybe 1 week you want to add more images, maybe 1 week you want to add just an image and text. It really depends on what you're trying to show. I always think the simpler the email it is, the easier it will be to get the messaging out to the consumer. Single column layouts are just mobile friendly. You don't have to scroll through a lot. And the content is just easier to read on most, if not all, devices. Multi-column layouts can organize things a little bit differently. If you have images and buttons and body copy, it is more efficient, but it requires a lot of design, and you have to be careful about where you place things, because if you're not paying attention, buttons can be in the wrong place, images could be in the wrong place. Again, if you're a developer, you already know these things. It's not like you wouldn't. But if you're dealing with a WYSIWYG editor, what you see is what you get. Just be careful about where you're placing things, design in mobile, because most people are looking at mobile. And then from there, cater to everybody else. Your Outlooks and your gmail.coms, not the apps. The apps you always have to cater to, because everybody's opening them. Because most people are opening things up in their work email or so on and so forth. So single layout versus multi-column layout, it really depends on you. Grid systems, like I spoke about in the last video, really probably don't make sense to a lot of you because you're not a developer. But for any developers that are watching this, if you are, use the grid system and structure accordingly, and then make sure, whether it's a WYSIWYG or mobile or customized mobile templates, that you're just creating a balance, distributing everything evenly, and then using a mix of text, images, and white space to have an overall visual harmony. And I just made a heart, not sure why. Icons and symbols, we spoke about that in the interactive part. If you're going to use icons and symbols, make sure that they're always on brand, make sure that they make sense for the email. People don't like bullet points, they use things like icons. Bullet points or icons or symbols to break up the email actually makes it look a bit more appealing. Does it make it really appealing? I mean, that depends on your user. Make sure it's clear that people actually know what the icons are. And also remember that special characters don't render across all platforms or all phones. So try to find ones that are plain, don't get too complicated. Things like emojis work too, but they probably only work. Obviously they work in iPhone, but just test across platforms. So for example, if you're trying to send emails to a certain .com, just make sure when you test, and .com I mean like Gmail or Outlook, make sure that they're rendering across, or it's not going to make any sense. And then stay consistent. Always make sure everything's uniform. Don't do things out of order. Make sure the icons make sense, and then go down that hierarchy. Visual storytelling. Your email has to tell a story. It just can't be a bunch of things thrown into an email and then sent it out with the hopes of it being the best it could. The story takes them through the images, through the wording. It guides the reader through this journey, this visual journey. And it does it using a mix of text and visuals and a narrative that resonates with the customer. Make sure it makes sense. The journey is just bringing them through the design, through the beginning, through the middle, to the end, and then using visuals to highlight the key points of the story. Keep the readers interested, make sure they're engaged, use relatable stories, use storytelling techniques, and emotional connection for references. And use emotional connection with the audience, because if they're not resonating, the email is not going to matter. Call to action design. This can be either the button in the email service provider or a button made from design. I say try both. Sometimes I think that animated GIF buttons, although a little corny in 2024, I actually think are kind of fun. Or you can use a regular button because they do mobile optimize pretty quickly. Use different colors, animate them, make them wider, make them shorter, make them fatter, use different text, bold the text, don't bold the text, underline the text. Position the CTAs in a place that makes sense, so under products, if it's under a blog, and then give them visual cues like arrows. Those generally increase the open rate when you have the visual cues like the arrow. Try that, try them without that. And then if you want, although I'm not a fan of this, consider placing multiple CTAs, but that only makes sense if you have products. If the CTA is performing the same action, I would do one, maybe the most two if it's going to, let's say, a blog. Don't do too many. Use contrasting colors and ensure your CTA stands out. Balancing your text with images. You can't have too many images with very little text or too much text with very little imagery. It just looks weird. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We talked about the minimalist effect or the minimalist design in the last video. I'm sure you can tell when too much text or too much imagery is in the email and the balance is off. Make sure it's proportionate. And then avoid overwhelming the readers with too much text or too much imagery also. My favorite, social media integration. Not really my favorite. Sending an email that just promotes your social media is actually fine, but adding the icons to the bottom is what I'm talking about. In this day and age, everybody has social media. Most companies do. If they don't, then I'm not too sure what's going on. But it's just giving the subscribers a reason to engage, and you want them to engage because these are your emails. And you want them to click on it, and you want them to be engaged in everything. If they're not engaging on social media, they have to engage in email. If they're not engaging in email, they're engaging on your website. Give them as many options to engage with you. And if putting social media icons on the bottom of your email is going to help, then do it. Storytelling through sequences. That's pretty much a flow. Doing storytelling through sequences is just creating a story, a cohesive story over time that's keeping the subscribers engaged from beginning to end, whether it be a welcome series, whether that be a series introducing them to the company. It's just giving them a reason to interact. And from there, you can use all the elements I spoke about before and then develop it, put a story to it, and use that as your email drip sequence campaign, whatever you want to call it. Also use things like cliffhangers and teasers. Leave the subscriber wanting more. Whatever type of imagery you choose to use for that. These are just ideas on how you can use your email creative through storytelling and visuals and so on and so forth. Storytelling through sequences is another way to spruce up your email creative. Email header design. Now, when I mean email header, I mean the logo above the main image. Now, years ago, maybe about 10, we used to make the PSD and then slice it, and that's how people would, and people still do this, I still do this, would click the header that way. Now, with things like Klaviyo, I'm just going to use that for example, or other email automation services, you can just make the header with text. Now, if you want to make it more fun, which a lot of people still do, you can design it in Photoshop or Canva or Figma or whatever it is, using your logo, using your brand colors. But like I said, always make sure to keep the email headers consistent across everything. And make sure they're the same on all platforms unless you have like a sub-brand, and then you would use a different type of branding for that. But keep them consistent throughout your emails. If you're using a gradient on one, use a gradient on the others. If it's contact information, shopping, make sure you keep it in. Just keep everything consistent and make it visual appealing. Photo design, as boring as that is, sometimes I think you just need to have it. Things like compliance, why they subscribe. You have to have your address in there because it's the law in America. I can't speak for any other countries. Your social media stuff is in there. Numbers to call you, your address, how to find out information. Make it easy for subscribers to find it. And if you're unsubscribed at the bottom or the top, make sure it's easy for them to locate as well. You don't want to be misleading, so make sure that the footer is done correctly so people can get access to what they need. Seasonal graphics, depending on the year, you should change it up. Maybe you have a winter header. Same exact header, but maybe with something more Christmas themed, more holiday themed. In the fall, maybe you have leaves. Maybe in the summer, you have sun. And maybe in the spring, you have flowers. I'm just making some things up. But use seasonal graphics and holiday themes. Use things like custom illustrations. It's all timely content, right? You're doing it according to the time. It's a timepiece. Make sure it's relevant to the season. And make sure it's relevant to the holidays, to the time of year. But using seasonal graphics, just like seasonal emails, are a great way to spruce up your email creatives. And then email backgrounds. Some people dig patterns. I don't dig patterns, but sometimes patterns make sense. And patterns are great if you can use them correctly. Instead of being so subtle, you can be a little bit more bold. So add some patterns, maybe some textures to the email backgrounds. It just really intrigues people's visual interests. Mine, it does a tiny bit. You can choose to use solid backgrounds if it aligns with your brand. If a pattern doesn't do that too. Make sure it's professional looking. Incorporate high quality images so the email looks amazing. All right, last 10. This video is a little shorter. I hope you liked it. If you didn't like it, that's fine too. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if there's something you want to see. If you don't want to see anything, that's fine. You can just email me at jcabale@cabalemedia.com. And go to the website, cabalemedia.com. And yeah, part 2 of email marketing creative and the last 10 on what I think you should do in order to make your email marketing creative better. Again, this is Janice Cabale with cabalemedia.com. See you at the next video.